Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If this is where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Each day we focus on different things, and today is Graphics Day. Of course, Monday is more business. We talked about spreadsheets yesterday. It was a very, very lively conversation. Wednesdays are audio days. Thursdays are Thursdays are Fridays. No, that's not the truth. Thursdays are video days. Sometimes it does feel like Friday. Fridays are infrastructure and how we get things done in IT. And then the weekends, of course, are Q&A and Sundays introspection. So think about when you ask those questions. If you've got graphics questions, we've got some folks here that really know a lot about it. So definitely throw your graphics questions in today. Audio questions are great for tomorrow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're in Makana, of course, you can ask those questions. You can vote on the questions. You can chat about the questions. If you're not in Makana, you can actually go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. You can do that 24/7. So whenever you think of the question, whatever pops into your head, just go to askofficehours.global, throw it in. Within the next day or so, we'll get it in there. All right, let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
First one comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. And Paul wonders, Google I.O. today at Shoreline Amphitheater. The keynote live streams at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Android 15, Google search, cheap Pixel 8a phone, a torrent of AI news. Watch party and after hours, perhaps?
Sure. So yeah, we can do it. Here's the problem with Google I.O., and I worked on that project for a long time. The problem with Google I.O. is that Google kills so many projects that you don't know what's going to be here 2 years from now. And so I think that Google's approach to product development of we're going to announce something, we're going to play with it for a little while, and then if it doesn't work, we're going to drop it. And they've dropped a large portion of them, makes the announcements harder to follow because you're not sure, is this really going to work? And I think that is a real challenge for Google as they move forward, is that no one, it's really hard to get people to spool up energy and work on their projects or take them seriously because they don't stick with them. And so I get the idea of throwing things against the wall and seeing how it goes, but I think it really undermines the excitement around their events because there's this cemetery full of projects that they announced at these events that are now in the ground. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, kind of going off topic a little bit, but on the same Google space, because you brought it up. Andy dropped a little bomb in the Discord yesterday that Google Starline, which we talked about a while back, it's this eye contact. I don't know if you remember the image, but it had this. Courtney's kind of looking around like he knows what I'm talking about. But they announced that Zoom is actually partnering with them to get this real look where the eye contact's dead on. So that actually excites me more than this by far. And if somebody could pop a question, we could talk a lot more about it, because to me, that's the future. And they partnered with HP as well for the device. So the article's pretty great. There's a link to it in our Discord in Zoom, and that's what Google's been up to kind of. Andy said the cat's out of the bag, so it must be big.
Well, I think that they're talking about supporting other things other than just Meet. So I think Zoom and other things that could possibly run through that system. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. I do think that it's important to get that eye contact together. But I think the biggest thing when they said is more engaging, I'm like, well, it turns out if you see the people and people have good audio and good video, it's easier to watch it. So I think that I'm sure that it is better than putting a giant teleprompter in front of somebody. I'm just not sure how much better, and whether it's going to be worth the cost. The ROI is pretty big. I think there's a couple other ways that we've done it in the past that are a lot less expensive. And I think that's going to be the challenge. It's a great idea and it looks really cool. The challenge really is cost of delivery, and how many people are actually going to have that system. And if you don't have the system on both ends, and so again, it's something that's very aspirational. I'm just not sure who's going to use it. And I think that's the problem that Google runs into often. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Albie Lopez in San Antonio, Texas, helping a house of worship with upgrading live stream setups, looking into purchasing a pan-tilt zoom camera with a budget of under $3,000 US with controls. The network needs a revamp, would like to use NDI as well as have an option for a table and or mobile mount for the monitor.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's resellers in your area that would be happy to loan you those cameras. So that's the thing, is there's Canon, Panasonic, there's PTZ Optics, and a number of these, they have different X's, 20x, 30x zoom. So one is how far away is this camera going to be from the subject? And the other thing is how big is the sensor? The more you walk up that price point, starting at about $1,000 and going up to 16,000 for a UE160, you start to see the difference in quality. And so sometimes by borrowing one of these from a reseller, you can talk the powers that be into upgrading to something a little better, or getting the controller, because you could let them grab onto the joystick and be like, hey, we could move around a lot easier. But some people just say, well, we can handle the presets. And that's the thing, is do you just really need a fixed camera? So you can augment fixed cameras with PTZs where you need them. So sometimes like a UE150 used to be a $12,000 camera, but you can get a CX350, which is the same optics and same sensor for $2,500. So if you just needed a wide shot, why drop another, 10 grand on something that you don't need the capabilities of the P, T, and Z if you just need the ability to have a wide shot? So there's good questions that a reseller will bring up. And getting into the NDI ecosystem, don't just look at it as cameras. You're going to want a layer 3 switch. So you're going to want a Netgear 4250, and you're going to want to have those profiles set up. So NDI can be simple, but if you want to just do a test, download the software, install it on your network, open up Studio Monitor on one side and Test Signal on the other, and just send one across your network and see if the picture appears. And if you get that, then try sending videos with screen capture and like a YouTube video, Lo-Fi Girl, something that I like to just hit play and see if it plays and receives on the other side. And that'll let you know at least of your network, because a lot of the times these church networks, they have antiquated switches, and you're not going to get away with a clean NDI feed. On the backplane just won't have enough oomph to get it through, and then the cabling might be old. So it opens up a big can of worms. But again, a reseller in your area, you're in a big city, would be a good person to talk to. I think Jeff Keithley's actually nearby. I know Texas is big. Everything's not nearby in Texas.
Lo-Fi Girl is the soundtrack for a generation. Just like, I was just walking through like 2 different offices last week, and Lo-Fi Girl's playing. So anyway, if you don't know what Lo-Fi Girl is, I think that it's been streaming forever. I don't know, on YouTube, if you search for Lo-Fi Girl, she just looks like she's just writing, and she plays some kind of groovy tunes in the background. And a lot of us use it for tests for embeds, but there's a solid 26,000 people that are generally watching, or 25, 35, 20,000 people listening at any given time. And for the last 5 years. Like, I think they reset it every once in a while, but sometimes it'll stream. If you wonder how long you can stream to YouTube, it turns out a long time, months, years. So anyway, that's Lo-Fi Girl. One of the things to think about with House of Worship, I've actually had a couple conversations with folks related to this right now, is I would talk to the parishioners that watch it live, if they're watching it live, and ask them what their behaviors are. When you think about investing in this, we've been talking to a couple folks about it, and well over 90% are just listening. And so the thing is that they're not really watching. They're not sitting down and watching it. And I think that the reason I bring that up is that, and these are people who are watching stuff that sometimes is much higher production. The TD Jakes and everything else. TD Jakes, of course, they have basically a TV station. That does this. But the vast majority are and just to think about where you're putting money as to the quality of the audio and the quality of the video, and just make sure that your audio is at its absolute best. It sounds as warm and as clean as you could. If you're going to put money somewhere, from the people that we talk to about it, I mean, we as video people want to have a bunch of PTZs and have a bunch of different cameras. But when we talk to people who are actually quote unquote watching it, they're turning it on YouTube, or they're turning it on wherever they're doing, and they're going back to what they were doing. Like, they're not sitting there watching it for the most part. And so that's the thing that, and I think that you won't improve that with less expensive cameras. The only way to improve the viewability of it is to really go all the way, and really have big cameras. And I think that if you don't, it's a really non-compelling experience, and I think that, again, you can, and sometimes if people really want to have that worship experience, but you got to have close-ups, you got to have camera operators, you got to have things that are going to make it look compelling. You're competing with YouTube, that's what people are watching, and man, it's a lot of good video. So, so I think that that's the thing that I would really think about, because I think that sometimes people spend a bunch of money on the video. They're not giving the best audio tools to the team and to the pastor or to the whatever denomination. Actually, I've been talking to people in like 3 different denominations, 3 different religions. So it's not really a house of worship as a Christian one, but on all of them, this is a problem where we spend money on the cameras and then we don't have money for the audio. And the audio is the thing that is, sometimes they say audio is half the show. In house of worships, I'm going to guess that it's really 80 to 90% of the show, is to make sure that people can hear it really well, because that's the vast majority of your audience is going to be audio. Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've streamed over 100 weekends for our church, and it would be interesting to do the eye contact thing, to the test that you used to do, Alex, where we could see what people actually do. Because when I watch some of the Joel Osteen stuff, I'm like, wow, they've got this camera on a jib and it's sweeping, but I'm more looking at the production. But how many people are just listening? And if they are just listening, we've switched over to Zoom, and a lot of people, I can see them. It's a Zoom webinar, so they can't see each other, but I can see who's in the room. And I don't know if they're paying attention or not. But then there's these other folks that I'll do a recording for, and I can see who watched it. And a lot of times I can't see if they're watching at 1x or 2x. But that's the thing, is when I go to listen to these things, I'll listen to them at 1.5x. And so that's the thing, you're collapsing time. I mean, even these shows, office hours, when I can't watch them, I'd love to be able to see the data on how many people watch it or listen to it at 1.25 or 1.5
I don't think
or
we get to
2x.
see average watch time. I mean, average watch speed is not something that we have.
That would be cool. We should make a
really
request.
I know who to ask. So so I think that would be really interesting, because I do listen to. I notice that there are different things that I listen to at 1x versus I listen about 1.8 is my average. So I sit there. I'm trying to get to 2. so my brain can sit at about 1.8. I will say that when you get used to 1.8, you try to listen to something at 1, it feels pretty brutal. Like you're just like, oh my, you feel like you could have a lunch between every word, and so.
I tried to listen to your conversation with Andy at 2x, and I had to slow it down. That was a brain that.
Yeah. We talk pretty fast. Yes, so we defeat that system pretty quickly. But I think that I do think, though, to be very, very careful. If you haven't spent the money on the audio, I would highly recommend really thinking about it. And that means the audio. That means the where they're talking, echo, noise, clarity, warmth, all of those things. That's where I would spend my money. Given the conversations we've had over the last couple of months with a couple of different, again, 3 different religions, all talking about the same thing, and what we're seeing is the pattern of their audience is listening to it, and so it is. So I would highly recommend thinking about the audio before the video. And it's easy for us to think about video before audio based on what we do, but the audio is 80 to 90% of your show. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. And Douglas wonders, a new study shows that irregular work-rest schedules can have a negative effect, or negative health effects, plural, later in life. Have you ever had to run on adrenaline or fumes to make a deadline? And he's got a link there.
Courtney?
Well, working in film production and television production most of my life, yes. Almost every day is running on fumes. This has become a huge problem, and as a faithful union member, this has been a negotiating point in a lot of union contracts, is the workday and how long it can be, and whether it is just possible to throw money at it to solve the working overtime into the evening problems. And this is a huge problem on sets and in production. Typically, since they will pay, you get a company that's got a deadline to meet, a release date. They want to work and get it done as fast as possible. They will work the crew 16 hours a day, typically on a television production. And that causes, there are rules, union rules, that prevent you from starting the next day within 12 hours at the end of the first day. So you get a rest period of 12 hours that's in the contract, but with a 16-hour day, your call time creeps every day. And at the beginning of the week, it's 7 a.m. By the end of the week, it's 5 p.m. So you're disassociated with the rising and falling of the sun, which is detrimental to your health. And this causes a lot of people to fall asleep on the way home from the shoot. And this is detrimental to your later life because it ends your later life. So Yes, it definitely can be. Creeping call times and getting out of sync with your regular circadian rhythm can be quite detrimental. And unfortunately, in some workplaces, it's part of the job, and they'll pay you extra for that, but you pay a penalty for it in the long run.
It was a really interesting thing with the in Germany. We were doing an event in Germany, and I believe, if I remember correctly, the maximum number of hours in Germany is 10. And I said, well, if we don't get it done in 8 hours, can we go into overtime? We're trying to do a load in. They said, well, we can go up to 10 hours a day. I said, well, how much does it cost after 10? And they said, oh, that's illegal. like you can't go over 10. And what was funny was they pulled in a truck to load in, and that driver had gotten there, and while he was pulling in, he got to like 10 hours and he just left the truck. He had to leave the truck. Like he had to everything stopped because there was a truck there, and the driver who could drive it was no longer allowed to work until I don't know what the break was, but it was a pretty big break. So anyway, it was so there's and that's taken, and it was done. I was told it was done because there was a series of people falling asleep on the way home from work, and the government decided, well, we're not going to do that anymore. Go ahead, Bill.
So it's interesting to me, particularly, that it still persists largely in residents and hospitals as doctors are being trained. They're still put through these 36 hours on shifts. And seemed to me that in that circumstance, they're looking for those to condition young medical personnel so that if you get into a massive event or something like that, and you literally are responsible for saving people's lives and you have to just keep going regardless, they'll at least have some experience. At least that's how it was articulated to me by one of the doctors I've known over the course of my life. And it's interesting that if you condition yourself to do this, it becomes reasonably easy to do for short stretches. But I do believe that over the course of time, if you don't regulate people's work, you run into this, I'm just missing things. And I know I've been in that circumstance at the end of, long production deadlines to meet a really hard deadline for a show that has to go on. I know the next couple of days, it takes me longer and longer nowadays to recover from those. So I think there's a reason to have pushes to get a lot done in a short period of time. But I'm happy that they're doing research on what are the negative effects of this, because I think they're real. I've experienced them. I think everybody in production has at one point or another.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I think it's really important for everyone, whether you're running a studio, a company, or working in one, to be very aware of this, that there are long-term effects to decisions like this. And I'm very much I'm the blind leading the blind right here, because I struggle with ADHD, which already makes any kind of time management an excruciating effort to begin with. As a survival mechanism, I gravitate to industries and working in situations where I can be in a dynamic environment where the schedule changes and what we're working on changes. And I'm very guilty of working beyond traditional limits in terms of time and being awake. I mean, there was a period of time when I was transitioning from a traditional office style career into feature films. So that meant I had to hold down that office job while also spending extra time on learning visual effects and doing visual effects and working in it before transitioning in. And then I had to prove myself, and I wasn't as good as the people that had been there longer. So I would take longer to do it. I would just do it so that I could get it done and say, hey, I'm reliable. I'm sure there are aspects of that past from decades ago impacting me today. I'm fortunate that today I'm in a teaching environment and I have a lot more say in when and how I work. But naps have become incredibly important and like a decision that is, this is the most productive use of my time right now. And so I just think it's important for everyone to be genuinely aware that this is a real thing. And hopefully we can all figure out how to work through this without forcing one another into these types of situations where you're running on fumes.
I'm a master of like 10 to 15 minute little power naps. Like just turn off for just a second and turn back on again. It's like, like when you have trouble with something, you just turn it off and turn it on. I just turn it off and turn it on a couple times a day. It's just like
sometimes in the middle of a show. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do it during shows. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, guys.
I've had 10 or 15 minute naps where I am just not present. Like I am somewhere, my entire universe is somewhere else.
Oh yeah, exactly. And we used to have I don't know. I guess I can say it now. I mean, but at ILM, we used to have, in the Rebel Mac unit, there was this little weird cubby hole, and there was like a little bed there. When you're rendering, people would wander over and take a little nap, and then come back when the render's done. Anyway, good guy.
Yeah, I've been listening to Andrew Huberman. He's a Stanford research scientist, and he's got a 3-part episode on sleep. And I didn't realize just how off you can be if you're sleep deprived as far as making mistakes in our show. If I press a button on some of the shows that I'm working on, it could be $100,000. You know, like you press the wrong thing and it plays out, and then it just goes downhill from there. And then losing that client, of course, would be a huge mistake. So having time to prep and having time to rehearse and having adequate sleep and being well rested before a show. There was one in particular I just wanted to bring up because he had asked if there was any experience. I remember there was a Media 100 editor that didn't have enough space on his hard drives to be able to do this hour-long show. So I said, okay, I just got Premiere 5 and this 9 gigabyte drive pair. And so I copied the show on, and it was dropping frames, and I had to get him to the dub house in the morning to run dupes, and I had to watch the same boring woodworking show, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, and talk about running on fumes. You try watching a boring woodworking show that's an hour long, looking for a frame drop, like, you know, so your eyes have to be open the whole time to watch for, you know, any little 1 or 2 frame glitch, because you don't want to dupe 100 VHS tapes and have to put them in the garbage can, which is what wound up happening. So there's the story for you.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting listening to this conversation because there's a certain amount of luxury in being able to take naps and being able to do this, that when you employ people, you know, when you are running a business, you don't get. And, well, obviously not naps during the day necessarily. So I always remember a very important phrase that while we believe there's a search for work-life balance is a myth. Work-life choices is really all we have. And I think you have to be able to make the choice, whether that's the choice for your health, for your work, for your family. But it's not a balance, it's a choice. And if you are in that situation, you got to continually ask yourself, what choice am I making and why?
Yeah, I read something. I don't know if it's true or not, but I thought about it a fair bit, and I'm trying to find that balance in that area where it said you can have your health, you can have your family, you can have your work, pick 2. Like, you know, like that's what's going to, you know, like, you know, and it's really hard to excel at all of those and have them all 3 of them go really well. And I'm trying to challenge that, you know, and make that, you know, and go down that path. But the, you know, again, you want to be able to sleep a lot. But when I was running a company, as Nigel said, I mean, when I owned the company and we were growing at a rate that we couldn't figure out how to manage, I mean, there are 3 or 4 years that I can only remember from photos. Like if you show me the photo, I remember where it was, but I can barely. It's just like this wave of countries. I'd wake up and I wouldn't know what country I was in. Like from the hotel room. Like I wouldn't remember like how I got here. Like, you know, and so and the real problem that I had there was that I was, you know, by 2017, after about five years of this, I was dragging a leg. Like literally one of my legs didn't work as well as the other one, and I was slurring. You know, and I had to really think about talking with diction. Otherwise I'd slur because it was so many time zone changes. And I thought that I just conquered jet lag. And what had actually happened was I was just in jet lag all the time. So I no longer saw the edges, you know, like, you know, and so it is something that, and, you know, and then I, you know, ended up and I think that the problem is that when my company was slowing down, you know, I wasn't able to think my way out of anything. You know, I couldn't think my way out of it because I didn't even know if I want to do it anymore. And so I think that's the real challenge, you know, and I think that, you to really enjoy it, you do have to stop. And I will say that, you know, I stop better. I still work pretty long hours, but I stop better than I used to. And I'm much more creative and much more effective because I have a little bit more sleep. I'm in a little, you know, I'm doing the things that allow me to do that. I eat a lot better, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that it makes a huge difference to your effectiveness. So I definitely am behind this. We've spent a lot of time talking about this, but I think it's an important subject. Next question.
John Foltz Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Apple is expected to announce upgrades to its Siri voice assistant at its annual developer conference next month that use large language models to generate more sophisticated responses to user queries. And that's the New York Times reporting that. Any comments on it?
Go ahead, Nick.
First would be that not surprising at all. And I think it would be easy to say, well, it's about time, but it's just keeping with Apple's mantra of letting others make the mistakes and then refining it and getting it and releasing it when it's absolutely seamless. I will share my boomer father uses Siri primarily only with Apple Maps. And so his nickname for Siri is misdirection. So I think that right now the thing with Siri is that it's almost like interacting with DOS. You're still issuing commands that she doesn't always understand everything. There was a one time when I wanted to tell somebody never mind in response to a text, and so I asked Siri, like, well, will you send a text to so-and-so? Okay, what do you want to say to so-and-so? Never mind. Okay, I won't send it. Like, no, that's not what I meant. So I would love to see improvements to this. I'd love to see being able to interact with Siri be much more conversational. I think there's a lot more that we can get out of this kind of a personal assistant type of thing. I alluded to my ADHD before. I'd really like to have an AI assistant that's just on me all the time, my phone, my watch, where I can add things and remove things from my calendar, ask what is my top priority right now, have an assistant to help me. And I'm hoping that, something like Siri will get to that level very soon.
Good, Nigel.
Yeah, so in reviewing the iPad announcement last week, I heard two very different things from Apple. I heard them use the phrase machine learning when they were implying how they use the technology to make things better. My guess is there's no way the M4 does what it does, that chip, without machine learning. It's not physically possible probably for people to build these sorts of processors without assisted technology. And then they use AI in terms of a much more consumer-facing interactive. And I think what Apple has to do, which I don't know has been done, I think, well yet, is outside of proof of concepts, really demonstrate the usage models in which AI is going to make, at least spoken AI, is going to make life a lot easier. I mean, I think we know set an alarm, set a timer, all of those things. So there are automation elements that we get our brain around. And you can argue whether, Apple does it better than anyone else. I mean, I think we're so far at the start of that journey, it's hard to know who's going to win that. But I think Apple's going to do two things. I think it's going to talk about the way it uses the technology to build better products and the way that consumers or users can use the technology to make their lives better. And I think those are two very different things you'll hear more about.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, they've been touting the inclusion of the NPU cores in their latest silicon and in the previous silicon for a long time, but they haven't been using it. And so I think their announcement is they're finally going to press that into use and incorporate it into its understanding of your commands to Siri, and not necessarily Siri's responses are done in the cloud, but at least I think it should be able to learn from, and maybe it can develop a token list from your vocabulary skills, so it learns the individual user's way of talking, and hopefully will then translate that into normal speech that Siri understands. I can vouch for the fact that although I don't use Siri, I do use home assistants from both Google and Amazon, the Alexa lady. And I can verify that they are not very smart either, but Siri was usually running in third place behind those two. And those two are going to get a lot more human-like in their responses, as demonstrated from OpenAI's ChatGPT 4.0 is now adding verbal responses. And I'm wondering if that's going to really get on my nerves after a while, having a really empathetic and emotional response to queries, if that's going to get on my nerves. I'd maybe like to load in a Jack Webb model for my home assistant. So just give me the facts. Just give me the facts. So it gives me an unemotional response. I think that's going to grate on you after a while.
I will say that I think there's a lot of places that Apple can cannot take too many chances, but still make it really great. Like just understanding where I am and making decisions about what it suggests would be great. It does a little bit of that, but it doesn't do it very well. The being able to just do simple things like interrogate my email list. Like I sent Courtney an email in 2015 about this. Can you bring that forward? And that is something that would fix a lot of things for people every single day. Being able to, look at a lot of the data that's only on my phone and smartly give me more information about it. Like I have a lot of data in my health app. So I track a lot of things in my health app. And being able to look at that and make suggestions or do other things like that would be really, really interesting. So I don't think Apple has to go very far to go that there. I don't think they're in that much of a rush because I have ChatGPT 4.0 on my iPhone right now. I have it. I've had it for a day. And it is amazing. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything by it not being Siri. Like I don't really care. But I'm already walking around asking it questions, like I'm talking to ChatGPT 4.0 and asking it questions. I wanted to see if it really worked. I don't know if you saw the demo that was that yesterday? I guess that was yesterday. Wow, it's only been a day because for me it's been like a week of playing with this app. I was like, so I did the test with my wife speaks Spanish or she can speak Spanish, and so I did the thing where I talk to her in English and it translates to Spanish, and I just said, I'm going to talk to my wife. She's going to speak in Spanish. When you hear Spanish, translate to English. When you hear English, translate to Spanish. And I started talking, and it just gave Spanish to her. She started talking and gave English to me. I was like, okay, my brain just turned off. Like there was not like a code or something else. I just said, this is what I want to do, and can you go do that? If you haven't seen that demo, by the way, from ChatGPT, it is both, as every demo from ChatGPT, from OpenAI, it is both extremely exciting and extremely terrifying all at the same time. you always have this, like, the two of them like sit together. And if anyone's watching from OpenAI, you don't have to make up that you're doing a stage event. Like, they were slow and boring when they were live, and they are now just feel very artificial when you record them and then play them out. Just look at what Apple's doing. Make a movie. So there was no reason to do what they did, but the demos were great and the technology is pretty cool. Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. For our commencement this weekend, I will stream to YouTube. I have both vMix and an ATEM Mini Pro. Which one is better?
Good guy.
Depends on the vMix system. If it's got a properly spec'd out CPU, GPU, then I would go vMix for sure. Last year, I had to do 4 of these simultaneously. So I had 4 splash tops open with 4 encoders out in the field, Epiphan Pearl shooting up to SRT, and I was able to push a PowerPoint as a holding slide. And then when the commencement began, I would go ahead and flip over to the live camera and stream it out. Listen to me very carefully here because I got burned. Pomp and Circumstance is the music. It is copyrighted, and YouTube will kill your stream with 300-400 parents, and you're, I don't want to use a bad language, but you would you would be out of luck. So be very careful with Pomp. Either get the music clearance ahead of time, or just mute that music, or find something to overlap it. And then if you really want to use the ATEM, use it as RTMP-B. So push A with the primary stream being your vMix system, and then use RTMP. So if you have the bandwidth, may as well use the ATEM as a backup. There you go.
Yeah, I would agree that as long as you have a good system, you have to have a really strong system with vMix to depend on it to do those kinds of things. You start asking it to do a bunch of things, and be very careful that if you have a smaller system or a laptop, you may overdrive that, and now you're going to see frame drops, you're going to see slow transitions, you're going to see some encoding issues. So you really have to have a beefy computer, in my opinion, before I would lean over into that. If someone asked me to do it, I'd probably do it with an ATEM, and the reason that I would do that is because I'd be risk adverse. It's not going to be as cool, but I can do the things that I need to do for that. And unless I had a big budget, I would probably stick with something that was hardware. So the only other thing I would say is that from the encoding perspective, I'd really think about a separate encoder. You may not have enough time to do that now, but using something that is like the Talon, like what we use for this show, or a link from AWS, having something else encoding that's sitting there and that's all it's doing. The ATEM encoding is okay. It's not great, and I do think you'll have a higher quality encode from the vMix as long as you have a powerful enough computer to do it. Next question.
Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts comes up next. I have been using Apple's USB-C digital AV multi-port adapter to connect my iPad to an ATEM Mini. I want to move to SDI. Is there an equivalent adapter for the iPad to SDI?
Go ahead, Nick.
I would just keep using that adapter and just get a Blackmagic microconverter. So if you're using the adapter already with the iPad and feeding that into an ATEM Mini, you can get a Blackmagic bidirectional microconverter that is an HDMI input and an SDI out, and it's less than $100, and so then you're good to go with SDI. The nice thing is that, by the way, that has a throughput so that you can also have that HDMI continue to some other device, including the monitor, if that's what you wanted to do.
Good guy.
I'll just leave this right here.
Yeah, the decimator is quite the thing. Yeah, go ahead, guy. Is that all you're going to leave?
That's it, yeah.
Decimator. A decimator.
That's the whole thing.
I don't know. I've never tried to use the USB-C, either the P or the tap or whatever from AJA, or I don't even know if that would work.
You still need to use the Apple adapter to go to HDMI, then HDMI into here, into the decimator, then SDI out. There's no way
to see it directly. Yeah, I was like, I don't think that'll work. But a lot of those adapters will work. Next question.
Leo Mindell comes in from London. The Facebook/Meta portal was discontinued last year. Is there a replacement that can work as a standalone monitor in Zoom?
Does Amazon's does that work with Zoom? I don't know if it does. I don't know if it can do that. But there is this really great standalone monitor that does work with Zoom, and it's called an iPad. And now when you turn it sideways, it'll have the cameras on the top. But that's the only standalone monitor that I know of that will do it right now. Next question.
Chris Sabato in Albany, Oregon. It looks like Apple has supplied a way to disable the orange dot, and he's got a link to it on the Apple site.
Okay, hold on. That one came up too quickly. I missed it. Let's see here. External. Oh, yeah. I can't believe Apple actually put this up. This is like they finally, I think, just gave in to enough of us complaining about it that they went ahead and told us what to do. But I don't think this is new. So this is, if we zoom in on it here, you can go into system override. You can but you have to go into recovery mode on your computer. Go to the terminal and do the system override, suppress camera, quit terminal, and then it will work. And that was published on May 3rd. That is a huge. I can't believe that's on the Apple page. I mean, this is what we've been doing for a while. It's got some security issues, obviously, but it's probably there for production folks like us that have been complaining about it almost incessantly for 4 years. Like there's been 4 years of us every time. Some of us talk to folks that are connected to Apple. It's always like, hey, when are we going to get rid of that orange dot? And I think that they're not going to give you a button for it because they want to make sure that it's something that, and the reason it's in recovery mode that you have to go into is that it would keep someone from ever getting into your computer and being able to override it on their own. So they can't, the reason that orange dot's there is so that someone can't can't sneak in. My mouth doesn't want to say that word today. Can't sneak in and turn your camera on. It's a security feature. So they put little orange dots on it because what they could do is they can have the camera on but show you a different monitor and you wouldn't see that the app is running or doing whatever it's doing. And that's why they have the orange dot. And they've been very specific about not taking it out. And we've made a lot of requests to do it. And we've had hacks like this for quite some time. So I think that that's why Apple didn't want to take it out. And now what they've done is they've given you the ability to take it out, but you have to go into recovery mode, which is not something someone could do remotely because as soon as you went into recovery mode, it would disconnect them. So they wouldn't be able to do the steps to do that. So that's probably why they're publishing it, is that's a way to do it there. So there you go. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York is up next. I'm unable to get Logic Pro 10.4 8.4 to recognize .mp3 files only .wav. Is this common, or is there a setting that I need to change? If I want to update, I have to run that by the school IT department. Thanks.
Good guy.
I was doing a little research on this to see if there was a definitive answer, and it looks like a lot of folks are just converting over to M4As or something else. So in QuickTime Player, you can just open it up, the MP3 in QuickTime Player, and export as a M4A. The other thing to try, some people have had success with this, is just dragging and dropping it. So instead of going File Import, drag and drop it in.
Next question.
Brett Woodall in Boston is up next. Has anyone had experience with LiveEdit or a similar product used for the production of Eurovision? If so, was it what was the application? He's got a link there.
We haven't used it. I've definitely seen it, played with it a little bit at I don't know why my IBC. So anyway, so we played with it a little bit at IBC. It really is driven. I mean, I feel like the only place I've ever seen anybody go through the trouble to use it has been Eurovision. I'm sure other people might do it, but it takes so much setup and so much work to get it connected that I think that's the real, that's the real challenge. Is that it you have to really rehearse everything to a level, because all those cameras are being cut to automatically. So they're calling all those things, and it's kind of everybody's kind of in this space that they're in. I don't know very many shows that do that, that do it at a level. I think that you may see it, again, for very, very intense ones, but I haven't seen it used anywhere other than Eurovision. Go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to say hats off. I don't know why, but I was watching the Eurovision, I think, first night yesterday, oddly, because I'd never seen it before, and I keep hearing about Eurovision. So 65 years of this live music countdown, survival of the fittest show. It's really interesting to watch it. There are a lot of things that I would change and a lot of things that I think are a little bit still old-fashioned about it. But just hats off to them for managing this monster European music contest for 65 years successfully. It's pretty amazing.
Next question.
Next question comes from Josh Kaufman at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What is the ideal starter project to get your feet wet with RealityCapture, and what equipment is needed?
Go ahead, Nick.
So I guess I'll start with, if you're on the Office Hours Discord, there is a photogrammetry channel, and I did just recently post an introduction to RealityCapture there. So that's a place to get started. For that example, I used an outdoor statue that is on it's under a tree, so it's not experiencing any direct light. So that's one thing that you can get started. I guess there's a basic checklist. Number one, it should be a solid object, not something that's alive. Anything alive is going to have movement. You can eventually, once you're comfortable with photogrammetry, you can help someone through sitting and being photogrammetry subject for you. But it's better to start with something that is an object that's not alive. It's important for that object to be optically solid. So you don't want something transparent like this. You don't want a chair that has like a mesh backing. You don't want something that can be seen through. Plants are not particularly easy. They wouldn't be what I would recommend to start with. So something that's solid, like a statue or a bust, or maybe a pot full of dirt or a rock. These kinds of things are optically solid. And then finally, you want to make sure it's not reflective or shiny in any way. The main thing is that the reflection on the surface will change the image that your camera that you use to capture all the pictures needed for photogrammetry is actually seeing on the surface of the object from angle to angle to angle. And even if it's shiny and it's just like a shiny highlight that travels along the surface as you change your angles around the object, that can confuse it. So you want something that's not shiny. So again, stone or concrete, these are great things because they're all of the above. They're objects, they're not shiny, they're optically solid. Go with that to start with. I think that's where I'll leave that.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is kind of back in that same lane. Nick, it's interesting how you connect to and control your Windows PCs from your Mac for Unreal Engine demos, as you've done on the show. Can you elaborate on how you do it? How performant is it for Unreal Engine and other graphics-intensive work?
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so one thing that you do have to know is that I'm very much cheating. Can we switch to camera 6 for a second? So I'm in a studio, and I've got a crew of 3 students helping me. They're waving off there on the one side, and there's screens all around me. So it's not like everybody else where it's just me in a studio. We can switch back to our main camera. So there's that. But I'm using NDI as my pass-through. So anytime I'm controlling a PC from my Mac or displaying a PC through my Mac or an iPad or phone or vice versa, I'm using NDI over wired Ethernet. And that's perfectly performant. It works great. I use that all the time in the studio so that I can share screens from one machine to others, whether it's feeding all the different screens that are in here when I'm teaching in the room, or feeding Zoom with content from a variety of computers.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith is coming in from Chautauqua, New York. I am working to upgrade my home server to Nextcloud. I have a 10 terabyte TerraMaster NAS. Do I connect Nextcloud to the TerraMaster OS using the built-in TM configuration, or do everything in Nextcloud by providing TM credentials?
You know, we talked about this on Sunday about these kind of questions. I think that if our IT folks are in on Friday, this is going to be a better question for them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cancel this one, and we're going to push it back to you. So, Zach, bring that back in on Friday. Instead of trying to throw questions in, if no one here raises their hand, and I definitely don't think I can field it, we're just going to push them back and tell you what day is the best day to do it, and Friday is going to be your best day. If you bring that back in, we'll jump into it, and we want to try to make sure that we have a specialist answering that question. And for those of you on Friday, we need you to be there to answer that question. We don't know. Anyway, so next question.
Next one comes from Nick Justison, who's on the panel here from Philadelphia. What recommendations would you have for buying BNC connectors for making do-it-yourself SDI cables?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think Alex's favorite is the Nutric in BNC, I think, which is the ones with the, oops, sorry. I just disappeared when I couldn't control it. This one here, the rear twist, that's an easy out. So you can twist it to unlock the bayonet from the rear, and so you don't have to get one of the trumpeter tools in there in a tight area of BNC connectors.
Yeah, I have a very strong opinion about this. I use those Neutrik rear twists, and there's a couple things about that I like. Number one is exactly what Courtney said. Is I don't often have to use a trumpeter to take them out. And the problem with the trumpeter in general, and it's not, if you get good at it, you can do it very, very well. But you get a long piece of metal, and then you grab onto the end of something, and what you're creating is a big lever. And that lever, if someone's in a rush, just pulling down just a little bit as they go is going to, over time, destroy your SDI signal, your SDI connections on your device. Now, one way that we get away from that is that we put convenience panels in so that you're never really interacting with the hardware. So you can do that. But what we found was there's a couple advantages to using the rear twists that I became kind of obsessed with. Number one, it's a lot easier. And when you're not in a high density area, even where you weren't going to use a trumpeter, it is so much easier to grab onto them. It's so much easier on your hands. So if you're doing things by hand and you're putting them in, the rear twists are just much more comfortable to use. The second big thing is that you can color code them all, and when you color code all of them, so I a lot of times will build them out of resistor codes if I'm going to put them in, and a lot of times we would do things like gray is one type of thing, purple cable is another, red is another. So going into the router oftentimes might be purple, going out is red. Other transports are gray, and so we know what those cables are. And then we started color coding the connectors, and I could sit there and look at a connector and know exactly where it was going and what it was doing and how it worked if we were building it for a rack that was going to stay complete. So they're relatively easy to put on. I would use I use a Coastal Cables motorized stripper. which will cut all the levels precisely. You can just ask them to calibrate it. So you tell them this is the wire that I'm using, and they will send it to you calibrated for that wire. And you can have them. There's a couple inserts that they have, so they'll just send you inserts for the different cables that you might use. You don't have to figure it out at all. And then you just put it in. You push a button. You pull it out. You strip it. Put the thing on. It's and so I really would recommend that's the way to that investment in that Coastal Cables automated, and you can get one that's a desktop version or one that's a portable version. You can walk around and use it, and it really makes it a lot more fun to put together SDI cables. But that along with so high quality ones I use. For shorter runs, when I'm building systems, we tend to use pretty small gauge. I can't remember exactly what the gauge is, but it's pretty small. It's like 22. I think because we get concerned about weight. We're shipping these things around and everything else, and they don't have to go very far. And so you get a highly rated but thin cable, and then you put the Neutrik connectors on, and that's what, 80-90% of the cables that we use have on it. Get some good music or a good book, and off you go. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. This is absolute gold. And I'm familiar with convenience panels because actually that's quite a bit of what these cables were being made for.
Yep.
I have no idea what a trumpeter is. What are you talking about?
A trumpeter. It's not a trumpeter. It's a trumpeter, and it is a. I don't know if I can try to find one really quickly here, but what it is it's a long. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see if I can.
Didn't mean to derail the conversation.
It's like a very
No.
specialized
I was trying to find it. Here's a picture of one. Let me. Let's see here. Yeah. So there you go. That's the picture. Courtney pulled it up. So what it does is it lets you get in. It's got this little piece, and it lets you get in there and grab. And you can get to the SDI and turn it so that you can take it off.
Yeah.
So when you have a high density router or something like that you can't get your fingers into. The issue is that you can still use that trumpeter with the rear twists. They still work just fine with that. But most of the time, if you absolutely have to, you can just reach in and unscrew it. No matter how high, you can't get high enough density that you can't put your fingers in and pull it out. And so now, I highly recommend doing most of the work. I try to minimize the number of times we go in and out because especially if you use Blackmagic hardware, there's not a lot of repair in Blackmagic hardware because of the nature of the way they build it. It's cheaper because they don't build it in a way that can be repaired. So like we had somebody accidentally step on a SDI cable and it ripped out one of the SDIs. And so then it was a 40 by 39 router. It's not like there's not any, there's not any fix, and so as a result, you learn to move things away from it and not allow students or sometimes the crew at a venue but crews at the venues are actually way harder because the students can be trained to do students can be trained to have what we call soft hands, where it's just like the last inch and how as they grab things and everything else. People at the venue will not listen to anything you said. You're younger than they are, and they don't even listen. You talk to them about being careful, and they're not listening. So that's why we put the convenience panels in, because they can destroy the. Number one is the convenience panels tend to be a lot more robust as far as their connection, but they also if they destroy them, that's a couple dollars, not a couple thousand. So, but I got to tell you that the once you start building SDI cables, especially, you'll never want to buy them. You'll look at everything that you look at. There are SDI cables that I buy, but those BNC cables, the ones that I buy, are really thin and really small. And they're made by PSC, usually makes them, and they're tiny, and I don't want to do that. But for almost everything else, you buy 1,000 feet, and what we do is we've bought 1,000 feet of this color, this color, this color, this color, this color, and then you you get all those Neutrik rear twists in lots and lots of different colors. And again, I just use the resistor code, for 0 to 10 or whatever, or 1 to 10 or whatever. So that they're all there. So that and it's just really easy for me to tell what I'm looking at. So it really helps a lot. Go ahead, Courtney.
And one important thing to remember is decide on your cable before you order your connectors, because connectors are made for different sizes of cable, and it makes a big difference as to the size of the crimp. If you're using crimp-ons, the crimp collar that goes on there has to be a specific size for a specific cable, otherwise it's not going to fit. So if once you decide on whether you're going to have flexible cable or stiffer cable, RG6, RG59, et cetera, then once you get your cable brand and number, then just look at your connectors and make sure you buy connectors that are compatible with that particular cable. Because if you make that mistake, you may end up with 1,000 connectors that don't fit any of your cable.
Go ahead, Bill.
This has been fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to quickly say somebody might not be familiar with the term convenience panel. Really, if you break the connection on the back of the device itself, it's an expensive thing. So you use a small cable that attaches that to a panel pass-through so that you can attach to that panel pass-through and not risk breaking the cables. That's what we generally mean by a convenience panel.
And again, if you're going to make one every once in a while or fix it or whatever, you can use the little one that you put your finger in and you go around or whatever. But I got to tell you that I grew up, I didn't never use that little hand one. All I used was the motorized. That's all I've ever had. And when I went to use one of the one with the little manual one, I was like, this is no way to live. Like, why would anyone do it this way? This is horrible. Like and because when you have the motorized one, you just make hundreds of cables and it doesn't bother you at all. But I was like, this is no, I'm not going to do that. So once you experience it, once you
dial a rotary telephone.
Once you experience the motorized version, you're not going to go back. It's like having once you have a Cuisinart, there's a lot of things you don't do with your knife anymore. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Jeffrey Powers' YouTube channel just hit 10 million YouTube views. Congratulations, Jeffrey. How do you predict for Geekazine
again,
YouTube?
I think this is a good one. This is another good one that we need to kick back because Jeffrey's not here. So for our question, folks, we're just starting to do this where we kind of pick things. It was based on a conversation we've had among the panel on Saturday of just pushing some stuff back. So we'll go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael, I've been dealing with DAW control, digital audio workstation issues, using Logic and my Yamaha DM3, confirmed by support as having known firmware bugs. For studio use case, would you change the mixer or add a digital audio workstation control surface as a workaround?
And this is going to be a whole day of this process of reminding you. So Wednesdays are our audio days. If you're going to ask more than basic questions about audio, save them for Wednesday because those are good ones. We're going to send that one back to you, Douglas. So Wednesdays, we've got some great folks there, and so they'll be here tomorrow, and go ahead and ask that question again. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith, Chautauqua, New York is back. Guy, have you used the vMix virtual control app during productions or just to test things out?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, the web controller is pretty basic, and it doesn't have any visuals. You'd have to use their LiveLAN or NDI or something else to kick the actual multi-viewer out so you can see what you're doing. We just use Parsec or Splashtop in our productions to be able to have remote operators control and see the interface. And nowadays, it's actually really cool. What we do is we use Companion, so we populate the buttons on a 32-button Stream Deck, and the operator will have two of them, so they can have page 1 and page 2 open. And we're just cutting with Companion satellite, so we let folks VPN in, and they get the credentials, and they're rocking and rolling, cut and show with Stream Deck 32s. So that's the way that I would fly. I wouldn't mess around with the little basic web browser input.
Next question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York is up next, and Henry wonders, can you recommend a small monitor for a gimbal cam or camcorder setup, and what's the most popular out there?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, Atomos is probably most popular, but it depends on what your budget is. I just ordered one of these because it was a good price, $135 on Amazon. Comes in a lovely hard shell case. It's Viltrox, Viltrox. And it's a 5.5. I think it's a model 5.5. Has its own flip-up sun hood, which is removable. It's a touch screen. It has also a navigate wheel and push button to navigate if you've got gloves on and can't use a touch screen. It has scopes built in, peaking for focus. It's HDMI in and out, no SDI on this. So if you need SDI. But if you're talking about a camcorder or something on a gimbal that is, HDMI out based, this will work nicely for it. It comes with its own battery. It takes the in-style Sony batteries in the back. It also has 12 volts in power in on the side. So if you've got a little adapter, you can plug it in with 12 volts. And it has audio out and a USB-C connector, but I don't think it takes video in over USB-C. It only takes video in over HDMI. But $135 with the carrying case, a battery, an adapter, a hot shoe adapter to hold it to the top of your DSLR, and it comes with cables for that price. So pretty good deal. Viltrox. I think it's a 550 is the model.
Coming up next, we're going to have Bert Monroy. I'm so excited to have him on in the second hour. And just a quick reminder that we have 2 interviews today. Bert Monroy is coming up. It's a really great day for visual artists. Bert Monroy is going to be on in just a minute, or less than a minute. And also, Emery Wells will be joining me at 1:30 this afternoon. So same place. You can go to YouTube or you can go to Mukana. But Emery will be joining us for a fireside chat about the Frame. He is the founder of Frame.io, and sold it to Adobe. and so Emery's going to be joining us, talking about the path that he took to get there, and also talking about the new version and why he works so hard on it. So stay tuned.